the breathtaking historical discovery that would summon the president himself to a forgotten rural town. A classified Cold War secret that had remained buried for over 60 years, all triggered by one woman's determination to create a home for her children against impossible odds, and the abandoned barn that held a map to what experts would call the most significant archaeological find of the century. Before we dive into this extraordinary journey, tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and if this intrigues you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something truly remarkable for you. The autumn rain pelted against the windshield as Olivia Morgan pulled her aging sedan into the rutted driveway of what was now, apparently, her property. At 34, the single mother of two had received the certified letter 3 weeks earlier informing her that a great-uncle she'd never met had left her his rural property and all contents thereof in the small town of Clearwater Creek, 4 hours from her cramped city apartment. "Mom, is that it?" asked 12-year-old Emma, peering through the rain-streaked window at the dilapidated structure. "That's what the lawyer said. 55 Hillcrest Road," Olivia confirmed, trying to hide her disappointment. She'd hoped this unexpected inheritance might somehow ease their mounting medical bills from her son's asthma treatments and the rent increases she could barely manage on her teacher's salary. Instead, she faced a collapsing barn with faded red paint and a damaged roof, surrounded by overgrown fields. "It's awesome," declared 8-year-old Liam, his imagination transforming the decrepit building into an adventure from his books. As they sat watching the rain, a pickup truck pulled alongside them. An elderly man in a worn jacket approached under an umbrella, introducing himself as Frank Delaney, a neighbor who'd kept an eye on the property. "Didn't expect anyone to claim this place after old Bob passed," he said. "Most folks figured it would go to the county for back taxes." "I didn't even know he existed until the lawyer contacted me," Olivia admitted. Frank led them inside, where surprisingly the barn contained a modest living space, a kitchen area, wood stove, and shelves of books and mechanical parts. "Bob lived here?" Olivia asked incredulously. "Had a proper house once, but it burned in '83, Frank explained, pointing to barely visible foundation stones. Instead of rebuilding, he just moved into the barn, said it suited him better. When Frank left, the family explored their inheritance. Despite her initial disappointment, Olivia found herself intrigued by her great-uncle's possessions, technical manuals from the 1950s, hand-drawn blueprints, and journals filled with precise handwriting. "Mom, come look," Emma called from the loft. "There's weird stuff up here." Climbing the ladder, Olivia discovered a collection of vintage surveying equipment meticulously organized alongside boxes of topographical maps. "Check this out," Emma said, pointing to a large wall map of the region covered with handwritten annotations. What caught Olivia's attention was an area circled in red with coordinates and a cryptic note. "Entrance 3. Maintained accessibility, confirmed 1987, 1995, 2008. That evening at their motel, they debated what to do with the property over dinner. "We could fix it up," Liam suggested enthusiastically. "Make it our secret hideout." "But we live 4 hours away," Olivia reminded him. "My job, your schools." "You hate our apartment, though," Emma pointed out bluntly. "You're always saying how the rent keeps going up." Olivia couldn't argue with that truth. Her teaching position barely covered their expenses, and her savings were depleted. The thought of owning property instead of renting had appeal, however. Impractical. That night, while the children slept, Olivia examined photos she'd taken of the strange map. The red circle marked an area about 15 miles from the property in what appeared to be uninhabited forest. Something about the precision of the coordinates pulled at her curiosity. The next morning they met with Howard Brennan, the lawyer, handling the estate. The property was fully paid for, with only $2,700 in back taxes needing settlement. "There is one unusual condition in your great-uncle's will," Brennan mentioned. "He specified that the property and all contents must remain in the family's possession for at least 1 year before any sale can be considered." "What? Why would he care?" "He never even met me," Olivia protested. The lawyer shrugged. "Robert Morgan was known for his eccentricities. I can only state the legal requirement. This complicated matters." Olivia had hoped to quickly sell the property to ease their financial strain. Now she faced a choice: pay the back taxes and maintain a distant property for a year, or decline the inheritance. Before leaving town, they returned to the barn for a final inspection. While the children explored outside, Olivia returned to the loft to study the map more carefully. A metal container beneath the workbench held detailed surveys of the circled area, including what appeared to be entrance schematics with the same Entrance 3 designation. The drawing showed a sophisticated door mechanism built into rock formations, with notes about maintenance schedules and security protocols that made little sense for uninhabited wilderness. As she examined these documents, her phone rang. Her school principal requesting an urgent meeting about budget cuts and potential staff reductions. The call crystallized how precarious her situation was. Even her job wasn't secure. Looking around at her great-uncle's meticulous work, Olivia made a sudden decision. She would accept the inheritance, pay the back taxes, and use her upcoming spring break to start cleaning up the property, if nothing else. Improving it might increase its eventual sale value after the required year. What Olivia couldn't possibly know, as she packed the children into the car, was that her decision would not only change her family's future, but would uncover a decades-old secret that would draw national attention to this forgotten rural corner. As they pulled away, a dark SUV with government plates turned onto the gravel road, driven by a serious-looking man speaking into a secure satellite phone. "Asset location confirmed," he reported. "No indication of security compromise. Continuing surveillance as directed." The vehicle paused just long enough to photograph Olivia's departing car before continuing toward the property that had just become far more than an unexpected inheritance for a struggling single mother. 3 weeks passed before Olivia Morgan could arrange a return to Clearwater Creek. The meeting with her school principal had been as dire as she feared. Budget cuts meant her position would become part-time next semester, reducing her already stretched income by nearly 40%. The news only strengthened her resolve to make something of the inherited property, even if just to improve its resale value after the mandatory 1-year waiting period. Spring break finally arrived, and Olivia packed the car with cleaning supplies, basic tools, and enough provisions for a 10-day stay at the barn. Emma had been unusually enthusiastic about returning, filling a notebook with sketches and questions inspired by the mysterious map they'd discovered in the loft. "Did you bring the coordinates?" Emma asked as they turned onto the rural highway leading to Clearwater Creek, her finger tracing routes on a printed map spread across her lap. "Yes, though I'm not sure what you're expecting to find," Olivia replied. "It's probably just some old surveying project your great-uncle was working on." "Then why mark it Entrance 3? Emma challenged. "And why note the years he checked it?" "That's weird, Mom." Liam bounced excitedly in his booster seat. "Maybe it's a secret military base, or a hidden treasure, or just an old mining shaft that needed monitoring for safety reasons," Olivia suggested, trying to temper their expectations while managing her own growing curiosity. When they arrived at the barn, they found signs of recent activity. The gravel driveway had been partially cleared, and someone had patched a section of the roof. Inside, the floor had been swept clean, and a note from Frank Delaney explained he'd taken the liberty of making a few repairs to keep the rain out until you decided what to do with the place. The first 3 days were consumed with practical tasks, cleaning, sorting through belongings, cataloguing items that might have value. Olivia discovered her great-uncle had been meticulously organized, with labeled storage boxes containing everything from family photographs to technical documents spanning decades. In one box marked correspondence, she found letters between Robert Morgan and various government agencies dating back to the 1960s. Most were mundane: tax notices, land surveys, permit applications, but several from a Department of Energy subdivision caught her attention, with references to ongoing maintenance contracts and access monitoring requirements. Meanwhile, Emma had become obsessed with the maps in the loft, spending hours comparing the mysterious coordinates with modern topographical maps she'd downloaded. Before their trip, on the 4th morning, she burst into the kitchen area where Olivia was sorting through kitchenware. "Mom, I figured it out," Emma declared, spreading several maps across the table. "Look, the coordinates point to Black Ridge Mountain. There's no marked trails there, but Great-Uncle Robert's maps show what looks like an access road that doesn't appear on any modern maps." Olivia studied the comparison with growing interest. Her daughter was right. The detailed hand-drawn maps showed what appeared to be a narrow road winding up the mountainside, carefully annotated with elevation markers and structural notes about retaining walls and drainage culverts. "This is from the classified file drawer," Emma continued, producing a yellowed folder stamped with faded security markings. "I found the key hidden behind the map frame." "Emma, you shouldn't be going through locked drawers," Olivia scolded. Though her reprimand lacked conviction as she examined the contents, what appeared to be technical schematics for massive steel doors built into a mountainside, labeled Emergency Access Portal, Site 7C. The file contained maintenance logs spanning from 1962 to 2008, all bearing her great-uncle's signature and official stamps from something called the Continuity Infrastructure Division. The most recent entry noted, "Final inspection completed. As per contract termination, all systems operational. Decommissioning postponed indefinitely per Directive 47B. "See, it's totally a secret bunker," Liam exclaimed, having listened to the conversation with wide-eyed excitement. "Can we go find it? Please?" Olivia hesitated. Her practical side said they should focus on cleaning the barn, not chasing what was likely just an abandoned Cold War relic. But the teacher in her recognized a genuine learning opportunity, and her own curiosity had been thoroughly piqued. "Let me think about it," she hedged. "Black Ridge is at least an hour's drive from here, and we don't even know if there's still a road to whatever this is." That evening, as the children watched a movie on their tablet, Olivia called Frank Delaney, hoping the long-time resident might shed light on her great-uncle's mysterious work. "Oh, Bob's government job," Frank confirmed casually. "He never talked. Specifics couldn't, I guess. Something to do with maintaining infrastructure up in the mountains. Worked for them his whole career, even after he officially retired. They'd send someone to pick him up every few months until about 3 years ago. Did he ever mention Black Ridge Mountain or something called Site 7C? Olivia asked. A long pause followed. "Ms. Morgan," Frank finally said, his tone noticeably more cautious. "Some things around here folks don't ask too many questions about. Bob was a good neighbor who served his country quietly. That's all most people needed to know." After hanging up, Olivia found herself drawn back to the loft, where she discovered a locked metal cabinet she hadn't noticed before, concealed behind stacked equipment. The key from Emma's classified drawer fit perfectly, revealing shelves of technical manuals, specialized tools, and most intriguingly, a battered leather case containing what appeared to be security credentials and access keys. Robert Morgan's government ID photo showed a serious man in his 30s. His face bearing a family resemblance Olivia recognized from her mother's features. The credentials identified him as a maintenance engineer, clearance level 4, continuity of government program, with an issuance date of 1961 and multiple renewal stamps extending to 2010. Also in the case was a sealed envelope marked "For Successor, Confidential," which Olivia carefully opened. Inside, she found a handwritten letter: "To whoever inherits this property, if you're reading this, you're likely family, though I may never have met you. My work required secrecy and distance, even from those I might have otherwise known. I apologize for that necessity. The keys and credentials in this case will grant access to Site 7C, a facility I've maintained for over 50 years as part of my service to our country. The legal requirement to maintain ownership of this property for 1 year before selling is not my eccentricity, but a security protocol established decades ago. The government will likely contact you once they realize I'm gone. If they don't, use the satellite phone in the red case under the workbench and dial the only number programmed into it. Tell them Maintenance Engineer Morgan, Site 7C, Protocol 17, and follow their instructions. Or, if curiosity compels you, as it always did, use the maps and credentials to see what few civilians have ever witnessed. The choice is yours, but please remember that discretion protected many lives during uncertain times. With respect, Robert Morgan. Olivia sat holding the letter, her practical concerns about cleaning the barn and returning to her threatened teaching position suddenly overshadowed by something much larger than herself. Whatever her great-uncle had been involved with was clearly significant enough to warrant decades of secrecy and careful documentation. The next morning, Olivia made a decision. "We're going to Blackridge," she announced over breakfast, to the children's immediate excitement. "But we're treating this like a scientific expedition. We'll document everything carefully, take nothing but photographs, and leave everything as we find it." They packed day packs with water, snacks, first aid supplies, and the carefully selected contents of Robert Morgan's security case. Using Emma's compiled maps, they set out in Olivia's sedan, following country roads that wound increasingly upward into the forested mountains. An hour later, they nearly missed the turnoff, an overgrown gap in the tree line that would have been invisible if they hadn't been specifically looking for it. A rusted chain with faded "no trespassing" signs blocked the narrow road, but the lock was broken, apparently long ago. Should we continue on foot? Olivia wondered aloud, eyeing the deteriorated condition of what had once been a gravel access road. "The maps show it's another 3 miles to the coordinates," Emma pointed out. "That's a long hike, especially for Liam." Deciding to risk it, Olivia carefully maneuvered her sedan around the chain and onto the overgrown road. They proceeded slowly, branches occasionally scraping against the car's paint as the narrow track wound upward through dense forest. After 30 minutes of careful driving, they rounded a bend, and Olivia abruptly braked. Ahead, the tree line ended at a massive concrete structure embedded in the mountainside. What appeared to be a bunker entrance, much like the technical drawings they'd found, was secured by enormous steel doors bearing faded government markings. "It's real," Emma whispered, as if speaking too loudly might cause the improbable discovery to disappear. As they cautiously approached the structure on foot, Olivia noticed signs of remarkably good maintenance despite the facility's apparent age. No significant plant growth encroached on the concrete apron, and while weathered, the massive doors showed no serious deterioration. "Look, there's a smaller door," Liam pointed to what appeared to be a standard-sized entrance set into one of the large steel panels with a modern keycard reader and intercom system mounted beside it. Olivia hesitated, the weight of her great-uncle's responsibility suddenly very real. Whatever lay behind those doors had been important enough for him to maintain in secret for decades. Now, somehow, that responsibility had passed to her. "So, do we try the key?" Emma asked, voicing the question they were all thinking. Before Olivia could decide, the unmistakable sound of vehicles approaching echoed through the trees. Moments later, two black SUVs with government plates rounded the bend, followed by what appeared to be a military transport truck. The vehicles stopped, and several serious-looking men in tactical gear emerged, training their attention. And what appeared to be weapons directly on Olivia and her children. "U.S. government, hands where we can see them," shouted the apparent leader, advancing toward them with controlled urgency. As Olivia instinctively pulled her children behind her, one of the other men spoke urgently into a radio. "Command, this is Site 7C Security. We have unauthorized civilians at the entrance. 3 individuals, 1 adult female, 2 minors." He paused, listening to a response, then approached more cautiously. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification. How did you locate this facility?" With trembling hands, Olivia reached for her backpack. "My name is Olivia Morgan. I inherited this property. I mean, not this property, but my great-uncle's property. He was Robert Morgan, and he left." The change in the man's demeanor was immediate. He lowered his weapon and signaled the others to do the same. "Did you say Morgan?" "Robert Morgan." When Olivia nodded, he spoke again into his radio, then turned to her with a completely different expression. "Ma'am, we've been expecting contact from the Morgan successor for 3 months. Protocol indicates you should have called the secure line before attempting access." "I found the letter only yesterday," Olivia explained, still shielding her children. "We were just exploring. I didn't realize we'd actually find anything, or that anyone would still be monitoring it." The man studied her for a moment, then extended his hand. "Lieutenant Commander James Harrington, Ms. Morgan, if you have the credentials and authorization codes, we have some rather significant matters to discuss about your inheritance, which includes considerably more than just a barn." As armed personnel established a security perimeter around the entrance, Olivia realized that her great-uncle's modest rural property had been merely the surface connection to something far more extensive and classified, something that was about to change her family's life in ways she couldn't begin to imagine. What she couldn't possibly know, as she hesitantly presented Robert Morgan's security credentials, was that behind those massive steel doors lay a discovery that would soon bring the President of the United States to this remote mountainside and reveal a secret that had been kept not just for decades, but for centuries. Lieutenant Commander Harrington examined Robert Morgan's credentials with practiced scrutiny, comparing security features to a digital reference on his tablet. After a tense minute, he nodded with apparent satisfaction. "These are authentic, though technically expired," he informed Olivia. "However, the succession clause in the security protocol remains valid." He gestured toward the children. "I'm afraid this complicates matters. Minors are not permitted access to any Level 4 facility without specific authorization. We'll wait." "In the car," Emma volunteered, though her disappointed expression made it clear this was the last thing she wanted. Harrington considered for a moment, then spoke into his radio again, this time at length, in what sounded like coded language. After receiving a response, he turned back to Olivia. "Given the unusual circumstances and your great-uncle's specific succession instructions, we've received provisional authorization for a limited escorted tour. The children will need to remain with security personnel at all times and are restricted to designated areas only." Before Olivia could respond, a metallic humming emanated from the massive doors, followed by warning lights cycling through a sequence around the perimeter. With remarkable smoothness for their apparent age and size, the steel panels began to separate, revealing a brightly lit, concrete-lined corridor stretching deep into the mountain. "Welcome to Site 7C, Ms. Morgan," Harrington said, his formal manner softening slightly. "Before entry, I'm required to inform you that everything you see is classified under national security protocols. Disclosure to unauthorized persons constitutes a federal offense." Olivia nodded numbly, still processing the reality of what had been hidden behind her great-uncle's mundane facade as a reclusive farmer. Taking her children's hands, she followed Harrington into what appeared to be a decontamination chamber. Just inside the entrance, standard procedure, he explained, as a series of airlock-style doors opened and closed in sequence. The facility maintains positive air pressure and filtered environments. Beyond the entrance procedures lay a reception area that seemed frozen in time. 1960s-era office furniture, vintage communication equipment alongside modern security systems, and walls lined with faded civil defense posters. A large illuminated map dominated one wall, showing what appeared to be an extensive network of underground levels and corridors. "Your great-uncle maintained the access systems and surface infrastructure," Harrington explained, leading them toward an elevator at the rear of the reception area. "The main facility is approximately 200 feet below us, excavated directly into the bedrock of the mountain." As the elevator descended, Liam pressed against Olivia's side, his earlier enthusiasm replaced by nervous awareness of the massive weight of mountain now above them. Emma, however, maintained her fascination, carefully, observing every detail as if memorizing it for later documentation. This facility was originally constructed between 1959 and 1962 as part of the continuity of government program during the Cold War. Harrington continued in what sounded like a rehearsed briefing. It was designed to house up to 300 key government personnel for a period of up to 5 years in the event of nuclear attack. The elevator slowed and stopped at what the indicator panel showed as level 3. The doors opened to reveal a vast, cavernous space unlike anything Olivia could have imagined, an underground complex that appeared to contain an entire small town, complete with multi-story structures, streets and infrastructure, all contained within an artificial cavern hewn from solid rock. "This is the residential and administrative section," Harrington stated, as if such underground complexes were commonplace. 42,000 square feet of living quarters, offices, medical facilities, and support services. As they walked along what resembled a small-town main street, Olivia noted that many of the structures appeared to be modular designs that could be easily assembled or reconfigured. Everything bore the utilitarian aesthetic of early 1960s government architecture, though with signs of periodic upgrades and modernization. The facility remained at operational readiness until 1992, Harrington explained, when changing geopolitical circumstances led to its reclassification as a reserve site. Since then, it's been maintained in caretaker status, with minimal personnel and regular infrastructure inspections, which were your great-uncle's primary responsibility. "But why would they need someone to live nearby?" Olivia asked, still struggling to connect her reclusive relative with this massive underground complex. "Couldn't they just send maintenance crews as needed?" Harrington's expression shifted subtly. "Actually, Ms. Morgan, your great-uncle's role was far more significant than standard maintenance. He was part of the Sentinel program, civilian contractors, with specialized training, who lived near critical facilities, providing both security monitoring and immediate emergency access if normal channels were compromised." He gestured toward a wall of honor in what appeared to be an administrative building, where photographs of serious-looking men and women, including a younger Robert Morgan, were displayed alongside service dates. These individuals sacrificed normal lives to remain ready to reactivate these facilities at a moment's notice. Most, like your great-uncle, served for decades without their friends, neighbors, or even family knowing their true purpose. As they continued the tour, moving through cafeterias, medical facilities, and communication centers, Olivia's mind raced with implications. Her mother's estrangement from her uncle, his isolated lifestyle, the peculiar condition in his will, all suddenly made sense within this context of secrecy and duty. "Mom," Emma whispered urgently, tugging at Olivia's sleeve and pointing toward a secured doorway at the far end of the complex, where several military personnel stood guard. "What's down there?" Unlike the other areas they'd toured, which had preserved an amber quality of a Cold War museum, this section showed signs of recent active use, modern security systems, fresh paint, and personnel moving with purpose rather than simply standing guard. Harrington intercepted Emma's question with practiced smoothness. "That section houses the facility's power and environmental systems. Not particularly interesting, I assure you." His explanation might have sufficed, had Olivia not noticed the slight tension in his voice and the way the guards straightened almost imperceptibly when they approached. Something about that section was different, important enough to maintain active security decades after the facility's primary purpose had become obsolete. Before she could formulate a question, a uniformed officer approached Harrington with urgent purpose. They conferred briefly in hushed tones before the commander turned back to Olivia with a significantly altered demeanor. "Ms. Morgan, there's been a development. The facility director would like to speak with you, privately." He glanced meaningfully at the children. "Perhaps your children would enjoy seeing the recreation area. It includes what was once quite an impressive library." Under the watchful eyes of security personnel, Emma and Liam were escorted toward another section of the complex, while Harrington led Olivia to what appeared to be a modern conference room incongruously inserted into the vintage surroundings. Inside waited a distinguished woman in civilian clothes, her bearing unmistakably military despite the absence of uniform. She rose as they entered, extending her hand with crisp efficiency. "Ms. Morgan, I'm Dr. Eleanor Vance, Oversight Director for the Legacy Sites Division. Thank you for your patience with what must be an overwhelming introduction to your inheritance." Olivia accepted the handshake, noting the woman's careful choice of words. "My inheritance? I thought that was just the barn and land." Dr. Vance exchanged glances with Harrington before continuing. "Your great-uncle's service contract included specific succession provisions. Upon his death or incapacity, his designated family successor would inherit not just his property, but his position as sentinel for this facility, with appropriate compensation, of course." "You can't seriously expect me to take over whatever classified role he played," Olivia protested. "I'm a school teacher with 2 children and a life 4 hours from here." "We don't expect you to make any decisions immediately," Dr. Vance assured her. "The position has evolved considerably since your great-uncle's appointment. Modern technology has eliminated much of the on-site presence previously required." She slid a folder across the table, an employment contract with the Department of Energy, offering a surprisingly substantial salary for what was described as site management and security monitoring services. "Essentially, Ms. Morgan, we're offering you the opportunity to continue your great-uncle's legacy of service, but with accommodations for your family situation. The position requires residence on the property and periodic facility inspections, but is otherwise compatible with your teaching background." Olivia skimmed the contract with growing disbelief. The compensation package was nearly triple her teaching salary, with additional benefits including comprehensive health coverage, educational allowances for her children, and housing improvement. Funds for the property. Why me? She asked finally. Surely you have trained personnel who could handle whatever this involves. Dr. Vance's expression grew more serious. The Sentinel program was designed around a specific principle, that local civilians with community ties provide security advantages that military or agency personnel cannot. Your great-uncle knew the area, the people, the patterns. He could spot anomalies that outsiders might miss. She leaned forward slightly. More importantly, the program operates on the premise that individuals with family connections to previous sentinels share certain characteristics: discretion, reliability, a sense of duty that transcends ordinary motivations. Olivia considered the surreal proposition before her. Just days ago, she had been facing a drastically reduced teaching position and ongoing financial struggles. Now she was being offered financial security and a role continuing her great-uncle's mysterious legacy, a legacy she hadn't known existed until this moment. There's something else you should know before you consider our offer, Dr. Vance added, her tone shifting subtly. Your great-uncle maintained this facility for decades, but his final reports indicated anomalous readings from the lower levels. Readings he was still investigating when health issues forced his retirement. She activated a display screen on the conference room wall, showing what appeared to be ground-penetrating radar imagery. These scans reveal structural features beneath the existing facility, features that do not appear in any original construction documents. The images showed clear evidence of chambers and passages extending well below the known levels of the bunker complex, with architectural patterns distinctly different from the utilitarian government construction above. We believe your great-uncle discovered something significant, something he documented in private records that would have transferred to his successor, records we have been unable to locate in our standard archives. Understanding dawned on Olivia. You think he left these? Records at the barn. That's why you've been monitoring the property. Dr. Vance nodded. We believe key information about whatever he discovered is among his personal effects. Information he deliberately kept separate from official channels for reasons we don't yet understand. A soft knock interrupted them, and Lieutenant Commander Harrington entered with clear urgency in his bearing. Dr. Vance, we've just received notification. CDF is inbound via helicopter with a Level 5 analysis team. ETA 40 minutes. The director's composure slipped momentarily. The Secretary of Defense, here. On whose authority? Director, they're claiming presidential interest in the Morgan discovery. They're specifically requesting access to the lower chambers and all documentation related to the anomalous readings. Dr. Vance turned back to Olivia, her professional demeanor now replaced with unmistakable intensity. Ms. Morgan, whatever your great-uncle discovered here has just attracted attention at the highest levels of government. I need to know immediately. Did you find any documentation, any records at the property that might explain what he uncovered? Before Olivia could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the facility, and the conference room door burst open to admit a security team moving with tactical precision. Director, we have unauthorized access in Section D. Someone's breached the lower-level security protocols. At that moment, Olivia's phone chimed with a text message. Looking down, she saw it was from Emma. Mom, you won't believe what we found down here. It's not a bomb shelter. It's something else entirely. What Olivia couldn't know as she stared at her daughter's message was that the children's escort had made a critical error in judgment, allowing them to wander into a maintenance corridor that would lead them to discover what Robert Morgan had spent his final years protecting, a discovery that would soon bring not just the Secretary of Defense, but the President himself to this remote mountain facility. Where are my children? Olivia demanded, rising from her seat as alarms continued to blare throughout the facility. The conference room had transformed into an impromptu command center, with security personnel rushing in and out, while Dr. Vance barked orders into a communication device. "Security teams are tracking them now," Lieutenant Commander Harrington assured her, though his expression betrayed concern. "The recreation area has multiple access points. It appears they may have slipped away from their escort." "They didn't slip away," Olivia countered, showing Emma's text message. "They found something important enough that you have armed personnel scrambling and the Secretary of Defense flying in." Dr. Vance exchanged glances with Harrington before making a decisive gesture. "Show her. There's no point maintaining compartmentalization now." Harrington led Olivia to a security monitoring station where multiple screens displayed different sections of the facility. One screen showed a schematic of the entire complex with a blinking red indicator deep in a section labeled Restricted Area D7. "That's where the security breach was detected," Harrington explained. "And based on the mass sensors," he tapped several keys, bringing up additional data, "the unauthorized entrants are approximately the size and weight of your children." "How could they get into a restricted area?" Olivia asked. "You said they would be under constant supervision." "Ms. Morgan," Dr. Vance interjected, "your great-uncle's access credentials, which you presented at the entrance, carry hereditary authorization codes. The system may have recognized your children's biometric signatures as authorized based on their relationship to you." Olivia struggled to process this information. What exactly is in that restricted area that has everyone so concerned? After a moment's hesitation, Dr. Vance activated a large display screen on the wall. 3 years ago, during routine maintenance, your great-uncle discovered an anomaly in the facility's lowest level, a section that, according to all official records, should have been solid bedrock. The screen showed what appeared to be ground-penetrating radar images of a massive chamber beneath the known levels of the bunker complex. Unlike the geometric precision of the government-built facility above, these structures showed organic, almost flowing architectural elements. Initial investigation revealed a previously unknown chamber, approximately 20,000 square feet, containing artifacts and structural elements that appeared to predate the facility by a significant margin. "How significant?" Olivia pressed. Dr. Vance's expression was grave. "Carbon dating of material samples suggests construction dating to approximately 950 CE, over 1,000 years ago. This discovery contradicts all known archaeological records of pre-Columbian civilization in North America." Before Olivia could process this revelation, Harrington's communication device activated. "Commander, we've located the miners. Section Devon, sublevel 2. They're in the primary artifact chamber." "On screen," Dr. Vance ordered, and the display shifted to security camera footage, showing Emma and Liam standing in what appeared to be an enormous underground chamber. The walls were covered with intricate carvings and what looked like written language unlike any Olivia had ever seen. Massive stone columns supported a ceiling adorned with astronomical symbols, while the chamber floor featured an elaborate mosaic depicting what appeared to be a map of the night sky. "Oh my God," Olivia whispered, watching as her children carefully examined what was clearly one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in North American history. "Your great-uncle spent his final years documenting and protecting this discovery," Dr. Vance explained. "He believed, and our preliminary analysis supports, that this represents a previously unknown civilization that possessed technological and astronomical knowledge far beyond what was thought possible for that time period in this region." "But why keep it secret?" Olivia asked, unable to tear her eyes from the screen where Emma was carefully photographing the wall inscriptions with her phone. This should be studied by universities, archaeological teams, because of what we found deeper in the complex, Dr. Vance replied quietly. Beyond that chamber lies evidence that challenges not just archaeological consensus, but potentially human history itself. Before she could elaborate, the facility's communication system announced the arrival of the Secretary of Defense's helicopter. Dr. Vance straightened her jacket, visibly composing herself for the high-level encounter. "Ms. Morgan, we need to retrieve your children immediately. The Secretary is bringing a specialized team with specific clearances. Until your status as the official Morgan successor is confirmed, your family's presence in the restricted areas could create complications." Olivia's protective instincts flared. "I'm not concerned with your bureaucratic complications. I want my children safely back with me now." "Of course," Dr. Vance conceded. "Commander Harrington will escort you to them immediately." As they hurried through the facility's corridors and down service elevators to the deepest levels, Harrington offered additional context. "Your great-uncle discovered the entrance to this chamber accidentally during routine structural inspections. Instead of immediately reporting it through official channels, he spent nearly a year conducting his own investigation and documentation, before filing an ambiguously worded report that triggered limited official interest." "Why would he do that?" Olivia wondered aloud as they descended deeper into the mountain. Based on his personal logs, which he did officially file, he believed the discovery was too significant to risk immediate government control before proper documentation could be completed. He apparently feared aspects of the site might be restricted from scientific study for national security reasons. The elevator doors opened onto a dimly lit corridor that immediately struck Olivia as different from the rest of the facility. While the upper levels featured the utilitarian design typical of Cold War government construction, this passageway had been roughly carved through natural stone, with portable lighting systems and temporary support structures suggesting recent excavation. At the end of the corridor stood a massive stone doorway, its surface covered with the same intricate carvings visible in the security footage. The door itself stood partially open, revealing the chamber beyond, where Emma and Liam could be seen examining the artifacts under the watchful eyes of several armed security personnel who had apparently located them before Olivia's arrival. "Mom!" Liam called out when he spotted her, running over with excited gestures. "It's a whole ancient city down here, like Atlantis, but real." Emma approached more slowly, her expression a mixture of awe and scholarly concentration that reminded Olivia powerfully of her great-uncle's photographs. "Mom, these writings, they're not like anything in our history books, and look at the astronomical alignments in the ceiling. They're precisely calculated for celestial observations." As Olivia embraced her children, Dr. Vance entered the chamber, accompanied by several individuals in specialized protective clothing, carrying scientific equipment. "Please understand," she addressed Olivia quietly, "this discovery represents a potential paradigm shift in our understanding of pre-Columbian civilization. The technology required to construct a complex of this scale at this depth simply shouldn't have existed in this region 1,000 years ago." She gestured toward the far side of the chamber, where another doorway led deeper into the complex. "What lies beyond is even more problematic for conventional historical narratives." Before she could elaborate, the chamber's lighting suddenly brightened as additional portable systems activated, illuminating areas previously shrouded in shadow. A voice announced, "Secretary of Defense arriving. All personnel prepare for security." In protocols, the atmosphere instantly transformed as military discipline asserted itself. Personnel stood at attention while security teams established a perimeter around the chamber entrance. Moments later, a distinguished older man in a perfectly tailored suit entered, flanked by military aides and what appeared to be scientific advisors in civilian clothing. Director Vance, he acknowledged with a brisk nod before his gaze fell on Olivia and the children. His expression registered momentary surprise before diplomatic training reasserted itself. "And you must be the Morgan family. I understand we have you to thank for this remarkable situation." "Mr. Secretary," Dr. Vance began formally, "may I present Ms. Olivia Morgan, great-niece of Robert Morgan and his designated successor for the sentinel position. These are her children, Emma and Liam." The secretary studied them thoughtfully. "The president will be very interested to meet you all. His helicopter is approximately 20 minutes behind mine." "The president is coming here?" Olivia asked, struggling to process how her spring break cleanup project had somehow escalated to a presidential visit. "Ms. Morgan," the secretary replied with surprising gentleness, "what your great-uncle discovered and what your children have apparently accessed represents potentially the most significant archaeological find in North American history. The implications extend far beyond academic interest into areas of national security, technological advancement, and possibly our fundamental understanding of human civilization." He turned to Dr. Vance. "The advanced team needs immediate access to the inner chamber to prepare for the presidential briefing." As specialized personnel began moving equipment deeper into the complex, Emma tugged at Olivia's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered urgently, "I need to show you something before they take over everything." With a maternal instinct that overrode protocols, Olivia followed her daughter to a section of the chamber wall, partially hidden behind a massive column. There, Emma pointed to a series of carvings that differed subtly from the others, and among them, unmistakably, was a symbol identical to a distinctive birthmark on Olivia's shoulder, a mark she shared with her mother and both children. "It's our family mark," Emma whispered. "The same one great-uncle Robert had in those old photos we found in the barn. And look," she pointed to a nearby section of text, "these symbols repeat with variations throughout the complex, but this particular sequence appears only here, next to our mark." Olivia stared at the ancient carving, her mind struggling to formulate rational explanations for what couldn't possibly be coincidence. The distinctive pattern, 3 overlapping circles with a central spiral, was indeed identical to the hereditary birthmark that had appeared in her family for generations. As she traced the symbol with trembling fingers, a subtle vibration ran through the stone, and the section of wall recessed slightly beneath her touch. Before either of them could react, the stone panel silently slid aside, revealing a small chamber containing a single object, what appeared to be a metallic cylinder, approximately 18 inches long, covered in the same writing system that adorned the walls. "Mom," Emma's voice was barely audible, "I think it was waiting for you." The cylinder emitted a soft blue luminescence that pulsed gently, as if responding to their presence. Without conscious thought, Olivia reached for it, feeling an inexplicable certainty that it was somehow meant for her family. The moment her fingertips touched the metal surface, the luminescence intensified dramatically, and symbols etched into the cylinder's surface began to glow with an inner light that cast strange patterns across the chamber walls. Behind them, the Secretary of Defense's voice cut through her trance-like state. "Ms. Morgan, please step away from that artifact immediately. We have no idea what technologies might be—" His words trailed off as the cylinder's glow enveloped Olivia's hand, and the strange symbols on its surface briefly appeared to transfer onto her skin before fading. For a moment, the chamber was utterly silent, as everyone present tried to process what they had witnessed. Then, from the inner doorway, a scientific advisor emerged with unmistakable urgency. "Mr. Secretary, you need to see this immediately. The inner chambers, they're activating. Systems dormant for centuries are powering up throughout the complex." As facility alarms began sounding once more and personnel rushed to respond to the unexplained activation, Olivia stood frozen, the cylinder now dark and inert in her hands, but somehow feeling like the most natural thing she had ever held, as if a piece of herself, long missing, had finally been returned. What she couldn't possibly know as the secretary's security team escorted them urgently toward the facility's upper levels was that her great-uncle had discovered not just an ancient, underground complex, but evidence of a civilization whose technology had been waiting, dormant, for the return of those with the genetic key to activate it, a key carried in the distinctive birthmark that had marked her family for generations. And now, with the president himself minutes away from arriving, that dormant technology was awakening throughout the mountain, responding to the presence of the bloodline it had been programmed to recognize 1,000 years before. The rapid evacuation from the lower chambers felt surreal to Olivia as she clutched the ancient cylinder in one hand and Liam's small fingers in the other, while Emma ran alongside them flanked by security personnel. Throughout the facility, lights flickered as power systems struggled with unexpected energy surges emanating from the activated chambers below. "What's happening?" Olivia demanded as they were ushered into an elevator. "What does this artifact have to do with me, with my family?" The Secretary of Defense studied her with calculated assessment before responding. "Ms. Morgan, that's precisely what we're trying to determine. Your great-uncle's research suggested a genetic component to the technology found in the inner chambers, but his theories were considered speculative at best. Until now," Dr. Vance added quietly as the elevator ascended. "Until you activated something our most advanced scientific teams have been unable to understand for 3 years." Emerging into the main level of the facility, they found controlled chaos as personnel prepared for the imminent presidential arrival, while simultaneously monitoring the unprecedented activation of the ancient systems. Scientists hunched over, monitoring equipment, their expressions ranging from bafflement to barely contained excitement. "The energy signatures are unlike anything in our reference database," a technician reported as they passed. "Definitely not nuclear, not chemical. Possibly some form of crystal lattice technology, but far more advanced than our current theoretical models." In the facility's main conference room, now converted to a high-security briefing area, Olivia and her children were guided to seats at the central table. The cylinder, which had remained inert since its initial activation, now rested on a specialized scanning platform where scientists worked feverishly to analyze it without physically touching the artifact. "Your great-uncle believed this complex was created by a civilization he called the Luminari," Dr. Vance explained, bringing up Robert Morgan's handwritten notes on a display screen. "Based on the astronomical alignments and symbolic language found throughout the chambers, he theorized they were an advanced society, with knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and physics that shouldn't have existed in this region a millennium ago." "But the most controversial aspect of his research," the secretary interjected, "concerned the genetic markers he identified within his own DNA, markers he believed connected him directly to this ancient people." Emma leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding the extraordinary circumstances. "Our birthmark, it's not just a coincidence, is it? Great-uncle Robert thought it was a genetic identifier passed down through generations." Dr. Vance nodded reluctantly. "He submitted his genetic material for analysis shortly before his health declined. The results showed several unusual genetic sequences, unlike anything in our comparative databases, sequences that appeared artificially constructed rather than naturally evolved." "Are you saying we're descendants of these people?" Olivia asked, instinctively pulling Liam closer as if to protect him from the implications. "Not exactly," the secretary replied carefully. Based on the limited analysis we've been able to conduct, your family line appears to carry specific genetic markers intentionally integrated into your ancestors' DNA, markers that function as biological keys to this technology. Before Olivia could process this revelation, a communications officer entered urgently. "Mr. Secretary, Marine One has landed. The President will be arriving at the entrance in approximately 3 minutes." The room transformed instantly as personnel, prepared for the nation's highest authority. Security teams conducted final sweeps while briefing materials were organized and verified. "Ms. Morgan," the secretary addressed her directly, "the President has been briefed on the preliminary findings, but your family's direct connection to the technology remains classified at the highest level. For now, I suggest we focus on the archaeological significance of the discovery rather than the personal implications for your family." Olivia nodded numbly, still struggling to reconcile the ordinary life she'd known just days ago with the extraordinary revelations unfolding around her. The simple spring break project to clean her great-uncle's barn had somehow led to genetic mysteries, ancient technology, and now a presidential visit. The distinctive sound of Marine One's rotors faded as the helicopter powered down, and minutes later, the main doors opened to admit the President of the United States, accompanied by a small entourage of advisors and Secret Service personnel. Despite the circumstances, Olivia felt a moment of surreal normalcy as she recognized the familiar face she'd seen countless times on television, now here in person, entering this secret facility buried within a mountain, about to be briefed on a discovery that apparently challenged human history. "Mr. President," the Secretary of Defense greeted formally, "thank you for coming on such short notice. The situation has evolved significantly since our initial briefing." The President nodded, his gaze immediately finding Olivia and her children at the conference table. "These must be the Morgans," he observed, approaching with practiced diplomatic warmth. "I understand we have your family to thank for one of the most significant discoveries in American history." "We just followed Great-Uncle Robert's maps," Emma replied with unexpected poise. "He did all the real work." A genuine smile crossed the President's face at her response. Modest and accurate, rare qualities these days. He turned to the Secretary. "Let's skip the formalities. Show me what we've found and explain why my national security advisor insisted this required my personal attention rather than just a classified briefing." For the next 30 minutes, Dr. Vance presented a comprehensive overview of the discovery, the ancient chambers, the astronomical alignments, the unprecedented construction techniques that had created massive underground spaces a millennium before such engineering should have been possible in North America. The President listened intently, asking occasional incisive questions that revealed considerable scientific knowledge until the briefing reached the most recent developments. "And you're saying this technology activated spontaneously when Ms. Morgan touched the artifact?" he asked, studying the cylinder still under examination across the room. "Not spontaneously, sir," Dr. Vance clarified. "The evidence strongly suggests the technology was designed to recognize specific genetic markers, markers carried by the Morgan family line." The President's expression shifted subtly as he processed the implications. "And Robert Morgan's research suggests these markers were deliberately engineered into his ancestors' DNA by this ancient civilization. For what purpose?" "That remains unclear, Mr. President," the Secretary responded, "but the activation has triggered systems throughout the complex, including areas we hadn't previously identified as part of the original structure." At that moment, a scientist monitoring the cylinder approached with visible urgency. "Mr. President, Secretary, the artifact is displaying new activity. It appears to be generating a holographic projection, but our equipment can't seem to capture or analyze it properly, All eyes turned to the examination platform, where the cylinder now emitted a soft blue glow once more. To the astonishment of everyone present, a column of light emerged from one end, coalescing into what appeared to be a three-dimensional map of North America, but with significant differences from the modern continent. It's showing river systems and geographical features that don't exist anymore, Emma observed, her academic knowledge surfacing. Some of these waterways were altered or disappeared thousands of years ago. As they watched, points of light appeared. Across the projected map, dozens of them, concentrated primarily along mountain ranges and major river confluences. Each point pulsed with the same blue luminescence as the cylinder itself. "Those are locations," the president said quietly. "Coordinates." "Sir," a military aide interjected, consulting a tablet, "we've pulled satellite imagery of the first three. And coordinates. Each corresponds to unusual geological formations previously flagged in archaeological databases, but never fully investigated." The president turned to Dr. Vance. "You believe these are additional sites? More underground complexes?" Before she could respond, the holographic projection shifted, zooming in to highlight one specific location, a point in the desert southwest where three states intersected. "That's the largest known meteorite impact site in North America," Emma identified immediately. "It's been studied extensively, but never fully excavated because of its location on protected land." As if responding to her observation, the projection expanded to show a cross-section view, revealing massive structures beneath the impact crater, structures that dwarfed the complex they currently occupied. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. What they had discovered wasn't just a single ancient site, but potentially evidence of an extensive civilization with advanced technology that had existed across North America long before conventional history recognized such possibilities. The president broke the silence, his voice measured but carrying unmistakable weight. "I think we need to speak with Ms. Morgan privately." He glanced toward the children. "Perhaps the young ones would enjoy the recreation facilities while we discuss some sensitive matters." Despite Emma's protests that she was old enough to participate, Olivia insisted her children leave with the assigned security personnel. Once they had departed, the president's demeanor shifted subtly from diplomatic to intensely focused. "Ms. Morgan, what I'm about to share with you is classified at a level beyond top secret. The existence of this information is known to fewer than a dozen individuals in government." He nodded to an aide, who distributed specialized tablets to the small group remaining in the room. "For the past 70 years, a classified division within our intelligence community has been monitoring what we categorized as archaeological anomalies, discoveries that suggested technological capabilities beyond what should have existed in pre-Columbian America." The tablets displayed photographs of artifacts, excavation sites, and technical analysis reports spanning decades, all bearing classification markings indicating the highest levels of government secrecy. "Your great-uncle wasn't the first to discover evidence of this civilization," the president continued, "but he was the first to establish a direct genetic connection, and apparently the first to successfully activate their dormant technology." Olivia struggled to process the scale of what was being revealed. Why keep this secret? This changes our understanding of human history. Shouldn't scientists, historians be studying this? The Secretary of Defense answered before the president could respond. "Ms. Morgan, imagine the geopolitical implications if it became known that advanced technology, potentially far beyond our current capabilities, lay dormant across the North American continent and could only be activated by individuals with specific genetic markers. Every intelligence agency on Earth would be hunting for people with your family's genetic signature," the president added gravely, and every military power would be racing to excavate and control these sites. As the implications of this statement sank in, the facility's communication system activated with urgency. "Mr. President, we're detecting massive energy surges from the lower chambers. The activation sequence appears to be accelerating throughout the system." On the wall displays, security camera footage showed the ancient chambers now fully illuminated with the same blue luminescence as the cylinder. Symbols and carvings previously dormant now glowed with internal light, while sections of apparently solid stone walls reconfigured themselves, revealing new chambers and passages. "It's responding to the artifact's activation," Dr. Vance observed. With barely contained scientific excitement, the entire complex appears to be waking up. The president turned to Olivia with newfound urgency. "Ms. Morgan, your great-uncle believed these sites contained knowledge and technology purposely preserved for future generations, preserved for those carrying the genetic keys to access them." He gestured toward the glowing cylinder. "That artifact didn't just recognize your genetic signature, it transmitted something to you when you touched it. The question now is, what information was it programmed to share with its intended recipient after 1,000 years of waiting?" Before Olivia could formulate a response, the cylinder's projection shifted again, displaying what appeared to be a human figure, but with subtle anatomical differences that suggested something not entirely human. The figure's right shoulder bore the same distinctive birthmark pattern as Olivia's family, and then, to the astonishment of everyone present, the projection began to speak in a language no one recognized, no one except Olivia, who found herself understanding every word, as if it were her native tongue. "I understand it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's welcoming me home." What Olivia couldn't possibly have imagined when she first decided to accept her great-uncle's modest inheritance was that this moment would not only transform her family's future but potentially rewrite human history and place her at the center of what the president would soon classify as the most significant national security matter of the modern era. As the ancient message continued and the dormant technology awakened throughout the mountain, one thing became increasingly clear. The inheritance Robert Morgan had left his great-niece extended far beyond a simple barn and 5 acres of land. It was a legacy that stretched back 1,000 years, preserved by generations of her ancestors. For reasons that were only now beginning to reveal themselves, "What exactly is it saying?" the president asked, watching Olivia's face as she listened to the projection, speaking in its incomprehensible language. Olivia's expression reflected wonder mixed with confusion as the words somehow formed meaning in her mind. "It's a message, recorded by someone called Ilarion, who describes himself as a keeper of knowledge." She paused, concentrating on the unfamiliar yet somehow intuitive language. "He says their civilization, the Luminari, faced extinction from a catastrophic event they foresaw but couldn't prevent." As she translated, scientists frantically recorded every word while specialized equipment attempted to analyze the projection's language patterns. They knew their civilization would fall, but they created these repositories throughout the continent to preserve their knowledge and technology. Olivia continued, the words flowing more easily now. They selected certain bloodlines to carry genetic markers that would activate the repositories when the time was right, when their descendants were ready to receive the knowledge. "Ready in what way?" the Secretary of Defense asked, his strategic mind immediately assessing implications. Olivia listened further as the projection continued its ancient message. They believed their knowledge could bring either great advancement or destruction, depending on how it was used. The genetic markers were designed to activate only when the bearers achieved both the technological understanding and ethical development to use the knowledge responsibly. The president exchanged meaningful glances with his advisors, And this Ilarian believes that time is now, that we're ready? Olivia hesitated, listening carefully to nuances in the message that transcended simple language. Not exactly. The message says the repositories are programmed to begin a phased awakening when contacted by genetic descendants. The first phase is an evaluation. An evaluation, Dr. Vance echoed. Of what? Of us, Olivia realized, the implications becoming clear as the message continued. Of how we've developed as a civilization, our technological advancement, our ethical frameworks, our stewardship of the planet. She paused as the projection shifted to show historical imagery, what appeared to be the Luminari civilization at its height, with structures and technologies that seemed impossibly advanced for their historical period. They're showing us what they achieved and what they lost, Olivia translated, as the imagery shifted to show catastrophic climate change, conflict, and eventual collapse. They're warning us that they followed a similar path to the one we're on now. The gravity of this revelation settled over the room. What had begun as an archaeological discovery had transformed into something far more profound, a message across millennia, preserved by an advanced civilization that had foreseen its own downfall and attempted to prevent future societies from making the same mistakes. Ms. Morgan, the president spoke after a thoughtful silence. Does the message indicate what happens next? After this evaluation? Olivia nodded slowly. The repositories contain knowledge divided into tiers. Each tier is unlocked only when the previous knowledge has been implemented responsibly. The first tier contains what they call healing technologies, methods, to repair environmental damage and stabilize climate systems. The scientific advisors in the room exchanged excited glances, immediately grasping the potential implications for current global challenges. And you're the key to accessing this knowledge? The president asked directly. Not just me, Olivia clarified as the message continued. The genetic markers were distributed across multiple bloodlines for security. No single line could access all repositories or all knowledge tiers. The system was designed to require cooperation, to prevent any individual or group from monopolizing the technology. As if confirming her words, the holographic map reappeared, showing the network of sites across North America with different colored indicators that apparently represented different genetic access requirements. This site is keyed to my family. Idline, Olivia explained, pointing to the blue indicator marking their current location. But the others require different genetic signatures, descendants of other bloodlines chosen by the Luminari. The Secretary of Defense frowned. So we need to identify and locate these other genetic keyholders to access the complete knowledge. It appears so, Dr. Vance replied, studying the map. A sophisticated security system designed to prevent misuse by requiring consensus among different lineages. The president leaned forward, his expression grave. Ms. Morgan, I need to understand exactly what your great-uncle knew about all this. His position as sentinel, was it coincidence, or was he placed here deliberately because of his genetic connection? Before Olivia could respond, the facility's communication system activated again. Mr. President, we're receiving unprecedented energy readings from the lower chambers. Something is forming in the central repository area. The security feeds showed the main chamber where Emma and Liam had first discovered the ancient carvings. Now, the center of the room glowed with intense blue light, as what appeared to be a three-dimensional structure materialized, a miniature representation of an entire city of advanced design, with architectural elements unlike anything in recorded history. It's Luminara, Olivia whispered, the name coming to her instinctively, though she hadn't consciously known it before. Their capital city, hidden beneath what would later become known as Black Ridge Mountain. The president turned to his scientific advisors. Are you telling me there's an entire ancient city buried deeper in this mountain? Not exactly, sir, responded the lead scientist, checking readouts from the scanning equipment. The energy patterns suggest this is a repository of information rather than physical structures. Think of it as an immensely sophisticated three-dimensional blueprint or model containing the complete specifications and knowledge base of their civilization. At that moment, Emma and Liam returned to the conference room, escorted by security, personnel who had brought them back when the new developments began. Emma's eyes widened as she saw the holographic city displayed on the security feeds. "Mom, that's exactly like the drawings in Great Uncle Robert's journals, the ones hidden in the false bottom of his desk drawer." All attention turned to the girl. "What drawings, Emma?" Olivia asked, suddenly realizing her daughter might have discovered something they had overlooked. "The night before we left the barn, I found a hidden compartment in his desk," Emma explained eagerly. "It had journals full of these weird sketches, buildings that looked just like that city, and diagrams of technology he said came to him in dreams. He wrote that they weren't really his ideas, that he was remembering them from somewhere else." The president signaled to an aide, who immediately began making arrangements to retrieve the journals from the barn property. "Genetic memory," Dr. Vance murmured. "The markers might carry more than just identification protocols. They could include embedded information accessible through dreams or intuitive leaps." As they processed this new possibility, the cylinder's projection shifted again, showing the holographic figure of Ilarion directly addressing Olivia. "He's saying that the first repository is now open to me as the recognized descendant," she translated, her voice betraying her wonder at the situation. "The initial knowledge tier can be accessed, but implementation requires consensus from at least 3 other bloodline representatives. And how exactly are we supposed to find these other genetic keyholders?" the secretary asked pragmatically. The answer came not from the projection, but from Liam, who had been quietly studying the holographic map while the adults talked. "Look," he pointed to the locations marked across the continent. "Some of them are glowing brighter than others, like they're already active." The boy was right. 3 additional locations besides their current site showed heightened energy signatures, one in the desert southwest at the impact crater they had previously identified, another in the Pacific Northwest, and a third in the Appalachian Mountains. "Activated by other descendants," the president realized, "other families like the Morgans carrying these ancient genetic markers." "Sir," a communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving reports of unusual energy signatures at precisely those 3 locations. Local authorities are reporting unexplained power fluctuations and geological instruments showing anomalous readings." The implications were staggering. Across the continent, other repositories were activating simultaneously, responding to some signal triggered by Olivia's interaction with the cylinder, and presumably other descendants were experiencing their own versions of this awakening. "It was all deliberate," Dr. Vance said quietly, connecting the dots. "Robert Morgan's position as sentinel for this facility, the carefully preserved bloodlines, the triggered awakening now. The luminary designed this system to activate when our civilization reached a specific technological threshold or crisis point." The president stood, his decision apparently made. "We need to locate the other descendants immediately and establish contact before this activation triggers wider attention. Dr. Vance, assemble a scientific team to begin analyzing the first tier of knowledge being offered. Secretary, prepare a national security framework for managing this discovery." He turned to Olivia with unexpected directness. "Ms. Morgan, I'm afraid your spring break has just become considerably more complicated. Your family appears to be central to what may be the most significant event in modern history." "What exactly are you asking of us?" Olivia inquired, instinctively placing protective hands on her children's shoulders. "Initially, to continue serving as the interface with this technology while our scientists work to understand it, the president replied, "Your genetic connection makes you the only ones who can fully access the knowledge being offered." He paused before adding, "But there's a more personal question I must ask. Will you accept the role your great-uncle prepared you for? Will you become the next sentinel for this site?" The question hung in the air, weighted with implications that extended far beyond the job offer from Dr. Vance earlier that day. This wasn't just about maintaining a facility or even preserving a historical discovery. It was about accepting a role in a plan set in motion 1,000 years ago by an advanced civilization, continued through generations of her family without their knowledge. "Before I answer," Olivia said carefully, "I need to understand what my great-uncle really knew. Was he aware of all this? Did he deliberately keep it secret even from government oversight?" The secretary and president exchanged glances before the president nodded permission to reveal more information. "Your great-uncle submitted a series of reports in his final years that our analysts initially dismissed as the fantasies of an aging mind," the secretary explained. "He claimed to have dreams containing detailed technological information beyond his education level. He documented astronomical alignments in the lower chambers that predicted specific solar events with impossible precision." Dr. Vance continued, "The explanation. Most significantly, he mapped genetic markers in his own DNA that he claimed were artificial, engineered rather than evolved. He predicted that his successor would complete an activation sequence he had begun, but couldn't finish." "Why couldn't he finish it?" Emma asked. "The genetic markers appear to have time-release components tied to generational progression," Dr. Vance replied. "His markers allowed him to discover the repository but not fully activate it. Yours," she nodded to Olivia, "seemed to be keyed to the next phase." As Olivia contemplated this extraordinary legacy, security alarms began sounding throughout the facility once more. The central display showed new activity in the lower chambers. The holographic city was expanding, revealing deeper levels and systems beneath the mountain. "Energy readings are off the charts," reported a technician. "The repository is fully activating and it's transmitting." "Transmitting to where?" demanded the secretary. "To the other active sites across the continent," came the response. "And receiving transmissions from them as well. The repositories are communicating with each other." The president turned to Olivia, urgency evident in his expression. "Ms. Morgan, we need your decision now. Whatever's happening is accelerating, and your genetic connection may be the only control mechanism we have." In that moment, Olivia thought of the struggling single mother she'd been just days ago, facing reduced work hours, mounting bills, and an uncertain future. She thought of the unexpected inheritance that had seemed at first a burden, then a curiosity, and now revealed itself as part of a plan spanning a millennium. She looked at her children, Emma with her scientific curiosity and analytical mind, so similar to her great-uncles, Liam with his boundless imagination and inherent understanding of patterns others missed. They too carried these ancient markers, this legacy of both responsibility and possibility. "We'll do it," she said finally, her decision feeling both monumental and somehow inevitable. "But not as government employees or classified assets. We'll serve as sentinels as my family has apparently done for generations, independently, with the freedom to make our own judgments about the knowledge being shared." The president studied her with newfound respect before extending his hand. "The United States government accepts your terms, Ms. Morgan. Welcome to a role you were quite literally born to fill." As they sealed this unprecedented agreement, the holographic city completed its formation in the chamber below. A perfect representation of Luminara as it had existed a millennium ago, now serving as the interface to knowledge that might help humanity avoid the fate of its creators. What had begun with a simple inheritance, a dilapidated barn and 5 acres of overgrown land, had revealed itself as the access point to humanity's most significant discovery, the legacy of an advanced civilization that had foreseen its own downfall and created a system to pass its knowledge to future generations. And at the center of this extraordinary convergence of past and future stood Olivia Morgan and her children, ordinary people who had just discovered their extraordinary heritage as custodians of knowledge that could transform human civilization if used wisely. 1 year had passed since Olivia Morgan had first turned her car into the rutted driveway of her great-uncle's abandoned property. The autumn leaves were falling once again, creating a golden carpet around what was now a completely transformed homestead. The barn, once listing precariously with its faded red paint and damaged roof, now stood proudly restored. Solar panels gleamed on the reinforced structure, while satellite dishes and communication equipment were discreetly integrated into the traditional agricultural architecture. The surrounding fields, previously overgrown and neglected, had been carefully cultivated with experimental crops developed from luminary agricultural knowledge, plants that simultaneously produced food while restoring soil health and sequestering carbon. Inside the renovated farmhouse, Olivia sat at the kitchen table reviewing progress reports from the 4 repository sites now operating across North America. Emma was conducting a virtual study session with researchers from 3 continents, her academic aptitude having flourished when given access to the educational resources provided by the Sentinel program. In the yard, Liam helped Dr. Vance calibrate environmental monitoring equipment, his natural intuition for the luminary systems making him invaluable despite his young age. "Hard to believe it's been a year," said Frank Delaney, the elderly neighbor who had first greeted them that rainy day, now a trusted ally in maintaining the property's unassuming public facade. From nearly foreclosed to the center of something world-changing, Olivia smiled, the parallel to her own journey unmistakable. From struggling single mother facing reduced teaching hours and mounting bills, to the primary sentinel coordinating humanity's careful integration of ancient knowledge, her life had transformed as completely as the property itself. The President's quarterly review is scheduled for tomorrow, she noted, closing the report files. The first climate restoration nodes have exceeded all performance projections. The initial implementation of luminary environmental technology had begun 3 months earlier with a network of carbon sequestration systems strategically placed across the most affected regions. The results had stunned even the most optimistic scientists, atmospheric carbon levels showing measurable reductions within weeks rather than the projected years. And still, no one outside the program knows where it really came from, Frank observed. Most folks think it's just clever government scientists who had a breakthrough. That had been a deliberate decision. Rather than revealing the existence of an ancient advanced civilization with all the religious, political, and social upheaval such a revelation might trigger, the knowledge was being introduced gradually through conventional scientific channels. The luminari themselves had recommended this approach in their archived guidance, understanding that societies often rejected revolutionary concepts that challenged established worldviews. A notification chimed on Olivia's secure tablet. A message from Dr. Maya Chen at the Southwest Repository. Second-tier access protocols initiated, preparing for consensus circle at scheduled time. The 4 genetic key holders had established a careful, methodical approach to accessing the luminary knowledge. Each tier was studied extensively before implementation began, with rigorous testing and ethical review. The first tier, focused on environmental restoration, had proven its value beyond question. The second tier, containing sustainable energy, Systems would begin its evaluation phase tomorrow during the presidential review. As evening approached, Olivia walked to the edge of the property where a small memorial garden had been established. At its center stood a simple stone marker honoring Robert Morgan, whose decades of quiet service had preserved the repository until his designated successor could arrive. "I wish I'd known you," she said quietly to the marker. "I wish you could see what your work made possible." The sound of an approaching vehicle drew her attention back to the present. A government car turned into the driveway, and Lieutenant Commander Harrington, now a regular liaison between the Sentinel program and military oversight, stepped out with an expression suggesting news of significance. "Ms. Morgan," he greeted her with the respectful formality that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. "I'm here to personally deliver an update on the International Implementation Program." Inside the farmhouse, Harrington shared satellite imagery showing the global deployment of the first-generation restoration nodes. What had begun as a limited North American pilot program had expanded to cover key environmental stress points across 5 continents. The Secretary-General has officially declared it the most successful international cooperation initiative in UN history, Harrington reported. Countries that haven't meaningfully communicated in decades are sharing implementation resources and technical expertise. The Luminari had predicted this effect in their guidance materials, that facing existential environmental threats with practical, tangible solutions would naturally foster collaboration across political divisions. The technology had been specifically designed to require minimal resources and create economic opportunities rather than hardships, removing traditional barriers to international cooperation. "There's something else," Harrington continued, his tone shifting. "We've located a 5th repository." This was unexpected news. The holographic map had clearly shown 4 primary sites across North America, each keyed to a specific genetic bloodline. "Where?" Olivia asked, immediately alert to the implications. "Central Europe. Preliminary investigation suggests architectural and technological signatures consistent with luminary design, but with distinct variations. Our working theory is that it represents a separate but related civilization, perhaps an earlier migration or cultural offshoot." As they discussed this development, Emma rushed in from her study session, excitement overriding protocol. "Mom, Professor Williams just confirmed it. The astronomical alignments in all 4 repositories predict a celestial event that's about to happen. Something the Luminari called the convergence." Harrington's communication device activated before he could respond. After listening intently, he turned to Olivia with the contained urgency of a military professional delivering critical information. "The President has moved up his visit. He'll be arriving within the hour with the entire National Security Council." "Why?" Olivia asked, immediately concerned. "Has something gone wrong with the implementation?" "Just the opposite. The environmental sensors are detecting unprecedented positive feedback loops in the restoration process. Areas projected to require decades for recovery are showing measurable improvement within months." As preparations began for the unexpected high-level visit, Olivia received simultaneous alerts from the other 3 sentinels. Each repository was exhibiting increased activity, with energy signatures rising in patterns that suggested coordination between the sites. When the President arrived, the usual formalities were abbreviated by the urgency of the situation. He was accompanied not just by security and advisors, but by the nation's top scientific authorities, all showing the focused intensity of people confronting unprecedented developments. "Ms. Morgan," the President greeted her, "I apologize for the unscheduled arrival, but events are accelerating beyond our projected timelines. The restoration technology isn't just working, it's evolving." In the Barnes Converted Monitoring Center, Displays showed real-time data from implementation sites worldwide. The Luminary technology, designed with adaptive capabilities, was responding to environmental feedback far more rapidly than anticipated, optimizing its processes without human intervention. It's as if the systems are communicating with each other globally, explained the President's chief science advisor, creating an integrated planetary restoration network that's exceeding our most optimistic models by orders of magnitude. As they monitored these developments, Emma burst into the room with Liam close behind. "The convergence is happening now," she announced. "All 4 repositories are activating simultaneously. Security feeds showed the chambers beneath Blackridge Mountain illuminated with intense blue energy. The holographic city of Luminara now pulsing with patterns that flowed outward along pathways corresponding to ley lines spanning the continent. Similar activity appeared on feeds from the other 3 repositories, creating what appeared to be a coordinated energy network. "Mom," Liam said with the simple directness of a child observing the obvious, "I think they left us more than just technology. I think they're coming back." Before anyone could question this statement, the cylindrical artifact, now secured in a specialized containment unit, began emitting the same blue luminescence they had witnessed in the repository. The holographic figure of Ilarion appeared, but with significantly enhanced clarity and presence. "Greetings, descendants and allies," the projection spoke, now in perfect English rather than requiring Olivia's translation. "The first restoration phase has exceeded parameters, indicating readiness for the legacy revelation." The President stepped forward. "What exactly is this legacy revelation?" The holographic figure seemed to perceive and respond directly to the question. "Your civilization has demonstrated both the capacity and ethical framework to receive the complete truth of your planetary heritage. The Luminari did not perish, as we allowed you to believe initially. We transformed." On screens throughout the monitoring center, the holographic presentation expanded to show what appeared to be the historical record of the Luminari civilization, not ending in extinction as previously indicated, but evolving into a state of existence that transcended physical form. When our civilization faced environmental collapse, a portion of our population chose to enter dimensional preservation rather than planetary exodus. We seeded genetic markers in promising bloodlines and created repositories of knowledge to guide your development until you reached the threshold for open communion. The implications of this revelation stunned even the most prepared minds in the room. What they had understood as an archaeological discovery, the preserved knowledge of an extinct civilization, was actually a deliberately established communication channel with an evolved intelligence that had maintained awareness of Earth's development for a millennium. The convergence marks the alignment that enables direct communication between dimensions. The Ilarion projection continued. Your successful implementation of the restoration technologies has proven your readiness for the next phase of planetary evolution. As this extraordinary communication unfolded, Olivia felt a profound sense of completion, as if her life's purpose, previously unknown even to herself, had been leading to this moment of connection between past and future, between one stage of human development and the possibility of what might come next. The President, trained through decades of political experience to respond to unprecedented situations with measured authority, addressed the projection directly. "We appreciate this revelation and the knowledge you've shared. What exactly are you proposing for this next phase?" "Not domination, not replacement. Partnership," responded Ilarion. "A symbiotic relationship between your physical civilization and our non-physical awareness, combining strengths to heal this world and eventually extend to others in need of restoration." In the hours that followed, a framework for this unprecedented relationship began to take shape. The luminary would continue sharing knowledge through the repositories, but now with direct communication rather than pre-programmed guidance. Human civilization would maintain its autonomy while gaining access to wisdom and technology that could address its most pressing challenges. As dawn broke the following morning, Olivia stood on the porch of the farmhouse that had once seemed like a disappointing inheritance and now served as humanity's connection point to an evolved intelligence. Emma and Liam joined her, watching the sunrise that symbolized not just a new day, but a new chapter in human development. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd just sold the property?" Emma asked quietly. "If we'd never found Great Uncle Robert's maps or followed the coordinates? Someone else would have eventually," Olivia replied after thoughtful consideration. The Luminari designed their system with multiple redundancies, different bloodlines, different repositories. They were patient enough to wait 1,000 years. They would have waited longer if necessary. "But it was us who found it," Liam pointed out with a child's pride in special status. "Our family." Olivia placed her arms around her children, feeling both the weight and the privilege of their unexpected role in history. "Our family, who almost didn't come here because it seemed like nothing but a burden. Sometimes the things that look like our greatest challenges turn out to be our greatest opportunities." In the distance, Blackridge Mountain stood against the morning sky, no external sign revealing the ancient repository hidden within or the dimensional portal now active at its core. What had begun with a single mother's reluctant acceptance of a seemingly worthless inheritance had culminated in humanity's most significant evolutionary opportunity, connection with an advanced consciousness that had been waiting patiently for civilization to develop the wisdom necessary to use its gifts responsibly. The map discovered in an abandoned barn had led not just to a hidden city that stunned a president, but to a profound revelation about humanity's place in a much larger, more complex universe than anyone had imagined possible. And at the center of this extraordinary convergence stood Olivia Morgan and her children. Ordinary people whose willingness to explore the unexpected had opened a doorway to humanity's next great adventure.